In this video, I'm looking at the BGVP DN3, otherwise known as the BGVP DN3. Let's get it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews. So we've got the DN3 here. Let me quickly tell you about it. This is a $74 IEM. It's a hybrid dual driver unit. It's got one beryllium-coated dynamic driver and one balanced armature driver. That is the standard box, pretty much straightforward. I'm not going to go through all the stuff you get inside, but I do want to show you something I really like what BGVP does, and they do this. Now, let me take that off for a moment. BGVP includes an excellent variety of ear tips, and not only that, but they have extra large ones that I can actually use in my man-sized ears, and I appreciate that. But I just wanted to tell you that apart from that, the rest of the bundle is pretty standard. You get a little carrying pouch there. So a while back I did the BGVP DN2, or the BGVP DN2, which is this one. Not bad, not bad. I think the new model is better, but before we get into the sound, let's have a look at these shells. Alright, here's the shell for the DN3. You can see it's got these horizontal alternative black and silver lines. It kind of gives it an appearance like an open back headphone. The width of the shells is actually pretty narrow, and the nozzle is reasonably long. And what that means is you can get a nice secure fit, but the shells don't protrude, they don't stick out from the side of your ears. And I find this shell very, very comfortable. It's beautifully built. It's got this lovely matte, smooth finish on it, black finish on it. And yeah, in terms of comfort and build quality, I think this is really, really nice. And although it is similar in design to the previous model and just slightly larger, I find this one actually just a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, that's the shell. Now the DN3 comes with this silver-plated copper cable. And it's got a bit of a sticky feeling. It's not really sticky, it's just grippy sheath on it. And a lot of people have been whining about the cable. Look, it handles pretty well actually. It just looks and feels a little bit cheap. I think BGVP would probably be doing themselves a favor by changing the cable up slightly. However, it is a good quality cable. Not only that, they give you the option when you're buying it to choose your termination as well. I got the 2.5mm balanced termination here. So that is the cable. Look, it could be better, but it is decent. Now back to the DN3, and yeah, pretty sweet. Oh, I should have showed you the right side before. It's got the BGVP logo on it there. Anyway, how do these sound? Well, I would say that this has a somewhat neutral signature with a slight upper mid-range or lower treble lift. Now, I'm going to start with the bass, and the bass is my favorite aspect of this earphone. And I tell you what, I actually really like the bass here. It is not as big and thumpy as the DN2. It is a tamer bass. It's not as big. It's not as thick, and it doesn't have as much impact, but it has a very nice natural weight to it. It's got a slightly rounded leading edge to bass notes. So that means they have a bit of weight. They feel natural. It's not a slappy, overly thin bass like that, but it does have some good weight behind it. It's not a thumpy or boomy bass. There's just a slight emphasis extra on the mid bass compared to the sub bass. Having said that, it does have a nice sub bass rumble, and I found it suitable for any bass heavy or bass centric genres like hip hop, EDM, etc. You'll get your big low rumbles down there, just not at a bass head level. So it's actually quite a mature bass, but at the same time, it's also very fun. The decay on it is quite fast, excellent control, no distortion, and so that 10mm beryllium-coated driver really does a good job here. Now, mid-range, and the mid-range it's on the warmer side of neutral. It is slightly smoothed and slightly recessed. However, vocals are quite forward, and compared to the rest of the mid-range, compared to other instruments, vocals are actually fairly clear, but the overall clarity in the mid-range, I would say, is just about average. So it's not great, but it is not too bad either. Instrument separation and overall resolution are kind of average, and the overall clarity throughout the mid-range is sort of mediocre. And the reason for that is the dip in the core or the lower treble around 6 kHz. There's quite a significant dip there. We'll throw up the frequency response graph here, and yeah, you can see there that it does have a peak at 5 kHz and another one around 8. And you know, people who have been talking about these, they're like, oh, those peaks, oh my God, the sibilance and the harshness and the... Stop, just stop, okay? Don't read graphs like they're the Holy Grail. You got to learn how to read them in context. Remember that I said the bass is only lightly emphasized, so you don't have this big bass to contend with. On top of that, you've got pretty big dip at 6 kHz. The perceived effect, when you're looking at the graph, it looks like there's a huge peak at 5 and another pretty large peak at 8 kHz. But really, those levels are not that high. It just looks like that on the graph. So in fact, what looks like might be quite sibilant is really not. It's not sibilant and it's not harsh. It's just fairly smooth overall and on the warmer side of neutral, as I said. Right, let's move on to the treble now. And so you get a little bit of a lower treble boost there, which does give it some definition and a little bit of liveliness. But then you get that big dip at 6 kHz and yeah, that diminishes the clarity in the mid-range a little bit. However, percussion instruments still have fairly good definition, and vocals, both male and female vocals, still sound quite articulate and detailed, but they just aren't sort of intricately textured, but they're fairly detailed and fairly clear. But getting back to the treble, it comes up again at 8 kHz, and then the extension is not too bad, but the upper treble is definitely somewhat subdued. But actually, the detail retrieval is quite good. Maybe not in terms of micro details, the smallest, most intricate details, but details in general are pretty good, and it does pick up most of them without a problem. But it's obvious that the DN3 has been tuned for a somewhat more casual experience. It's for the person on the street. It's not for your hardcore audiophile who wants that really high fidelity, sort of thinner, more leaner sound with absolute detail and separation and all those things. It's more of a musical IEM, and overall I think BGVP have done a pretty good job with it. I actually quite like it. I would personally like to see that 6 kHz dip lifted up a bit. You could do it with equalization, of course. I would like to see a little bit more clarity in the mid-range and a bit more treble energy, a bit more detail. But really, for your average person, I think these sound pretty darn good. Definitely an improvement over the DN2. And I think these have sort of flown under the radar by overly harsh criticism, when in fact it's quite a competent IEM. Alright guys, that is the BGVP DN3, or the BGVP DN3. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, Parfam audiophile style. And if you want to see more reviews like this and you haven't subscribed, go and hit that subscribe button now and check out my affiliate links down below. Well, until next time guys, see you later.